DFS community. Welcome into the Week 11 edition of one of the most accurate DFS shows in the industry. This is the Adjusted Line Play Report, where we take a deep dive into the play in the trenches to determine game scripts and player outcomes. This show is presented by Zilla Fantasy Elite. I am your host, Todd Hoffman. You can find myself over on Twitter at Todzilla1337. And you can find Zilla Fantasy Elite over on Twitter at Zilla Fantasy. And as always, folks, today's show is powered by Rain Total Body Fuel. Looking to make it rain some additional cash in DFS? Tune in to the Adjusted Line Play Report from Zilla Fantasy Elite and follow host Todd Hoffman while he delivers the most accurate DFS advice in the industry and make it rain. All right. Today's flavor is actually rainbow sherbet. It's very delicious. I actually did take one and realized that my microphone wasn't listed as the default option for the microphone, so I wasn't picking up any sort of audio. It's already been opened. I'm going to take another sip and get our Saturday started off right. As always, starting our Saturday off very nicely in the morning with that Rain Total Body Fuel. All of that is in jest. They are not a sponsor. I actually reached out to them and asked if they would be interested in sponsoring a show in real life, and they told me to get lost. They're not interested in making it rain any sort of additional cash in DFS or into their own pocketbooks with me basically giving out free advertising already. Anyway, let's get underway with the Adjusted Line Play Report. For those of you who are new to the show, go check out the Thursday night theories. If you're not sure what the heck all these numbers mean, what is pace of play? What do all these offensive pass protection, pass rush, all this stuff, what do those numbers mean? Go look at the Thursday night theory. I go in depth on the Thursday night football game and telling you, hey, this is how I look at the Adjusted Line Play Report. Here's how I see what these numbers mean, and how I can kind of build a game script out of that, and what's actually going to happen on the field on Thursday night. If you look at the Baltimore Cincinnati game this week, I kind of said Baltimore rushing game is looking very good. Get Gus Edwards in there. Not even opposed to having Gus Edwards and Keaton Mitchell in there. I thought Keaton Mitchell would be explosive. And we did see the first carry that he took. He slipped on that field. We saw a little bit of slippage on that field there in Baltimore in the early part of the matchup. And it looked like that slip, if he didn't do that, he could have taken his first carry to the house. But, unfortunately he slipped and he had a bad week. But Gus Edwards came through with the 2 touchdowns on the ground, and that's kind of how that works. So if you're interested in seeing what these numbers mean, so you can apply it to your DFS or your start-sit decisions. Let's say you got 2 flex players. I'm really torn. It's a coin flip. Who am I going to start? Well, you can come look at the numbers and say, oh, actually, based off of this, player A is actually in a really bad matchup with their pass play. It doesn't look like they're going to be very effective in the pass game, where my other flex option, it looks like they're going to be way better. They're in a really good game environment. They're second highest game total on the slate, and it looks like their pass game is going to be how they have to move the ball, and now I'm going to start that wide receiver over the other one because of the situation. And that's really what the Adjusted Line Play Report is here for, is to help you make better start-sit decisions in your lineup for DFS. You always get those 50-50 shots. Which player do I want in here? And also with your lineups. And then a little bit less, but you can kind of take this info, start making some prop bets. So if it looks like something's a really juicy matchup and you find somebody that's got a low total, certainly bet the over on that. If you see the opposite, hey, it looks like this run game's going to really struggle. The running back sitting at 65.5 rushing yards. I'm betting the under on that particular running back to go under that total. You can use it for that as well. All right. With that being said, we're going to hop right into the main slate here. We don't have any games over in Europe wrecking the slate. So we're going to just start with the number one game totals on the slate and go all the way down. We got 11 games on the main slate this week, and then we'll touch those island games on Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football, and hopefully give you the answers to the test when you're setting those island game lineups in your DFS tournaments. All right, we got two games at number one here, Arizona and Houston, which we're going to touch first, and then we also have Chicago and Detroit. So getting into the Arizona and Houston game, they are number one. Again, tied for first at 48 for a Vegas game total. Houston are 6-point home favorites. That gives them a 27 team implied total, and Arizona a 21 team implied total. Getting into the away team first here, Arizona 21st in offensive pass protection, Houston 16th in the defensive pass rush. Very slight favor for Houston there, if not like an even matchup. Again, this is adjusted sack rate. Nothing to write home about on this particular matchup, but just realize that these numbers in the pass game are without Kyler Murray. With him back, they could certainly adjust better or worse in that adjusted sack rate category. Getting into the pass DVOA, Arizona at 26, so in the red there, Houston 20th. Again, about a 6-point difference there, 5-6 point difference, same as the pass protection. This is really just telling me that Arizona's pass game isn't going to be super efficient. Trying to move the ball, they're probably going to struggle a little bit. But again, these numbers are without Kyler, so they take them kind of with a grain of salt. He could really improve or really drastically be worse than they were in the past, but I think he's a little bit better than Josh Dobbs and the guys that they're trotting out earlier in the season. So these might be more of an even matchup, and typically when that's the case, I like to say studs eat. The people that normally are getting the ball on the offense will continue getting the ball, or the ones that are designed to get the ball. We haven't really seen that be Hollywood Brown at all this year. We've kind of seen a mix mash of him and Michael Wilson and Rondale Moore getting, some underneath targets, but really the mainstay in this particular offense, and I don't know if it was Kyler's first game back, but certainly when we saw it in his first game back and with the quarterbacks prior to that, they have been heavily targeting the tight ends in this offense. So that's probably going to continue in this particular matchup, especially if Arizona's, pretty heavily the underdog in this. They might be down and needing to throw a little bit more. So that means Trey McBride probably going to be in a pretty solid matchup. And if I remember hearing correctly, Houston's one of the worst in adjusted fantasy points given up to the tight end position. I don't know who they played off the top of my head this season, if they've been playing like Travis Kelce and, Minnesota with Hawkinson. That could be a different story. Hey, they're playing all the best tight ends in the league. Of course, they're going to have some fantasy points given up there, but that's how the pass protection and pass game is going to look for Arizona. Kind of up in the air. Really, the pieces that I'd be interested in are going to be the tight end, Trey McBride, especially in tournaments. I think he could be somebody that pops off for a couple of touchdowns, 8 or 9 receptions in this particular matchup. Getting into the run blocking for Arizona, they're number 23, so that's in the red. Houston number 5 in defensive run stopping. And really, you can kind of think of this as how consistently good or bad are they. So Houston at number 5, that means they're hitting people behind the line of scrimmage or at the line of scrimmage very often. Kind of a low yards per carry in general. So if you're looking at, a histogram of all the different outcomes of the runs that they've given up, is going to skew towards, hey, they don't give up, or a lot of those values are, below 3 yards on those carries. They might give up a few explosive plays that are like 70, 80 yards, but the vast majority of those are sitting on the lower end, where Arizona's actually very similar, but they're on offense, where you want to be a little bit better than that. You don't want all of yours skewed towards the lower end. It looks like Arizona's is skewing towards a lot of their runs don't end up being very successful, but the run DVOA, number 9 versus Houston's number 13. Again, run DVOA is in this particular situation, how good or bad were you compared to a standard outcome? Arizona is actually top 10 there at number 9, Houston 13. I know Arizona has a lot of rushing touchdowns, which is probably skewing some of this data pretty heavily into the green. So take that into consideration. This is probably more of a neutral matchup, but with Kyler there, he certainly opens up run game. And yeah, I don't know. We have James Conner, I believe, back there for Arizona, so he could certainly be in play here. But with a high Vegas game total, Arizona actually 12th best team implied total, so they're not super high there. But Houston at number 3 is somebody to watch out for. I think Arizona's going to have to skew towards the pass in this game anyway, if they're down from Houston pounding them. All right, getting into the Houston side, they are number 10 in offensive pass protection, Arizona number 18. This is telling me that Houston should have a decent amount of time to throw. Arizona is not going to be putting a ton of pressure on them, which is good. The pass DVOA, though, that's where the money's at. We have Houston at number 2, Arizona at number 30 in the defensive pass DVOA. That's a huge favor for Houston. Arizona's been really bad at giving up, better than average plays, probably including touchdowns in the pass game. Houston's been really good. Top 2, Arizona bottom 3. So this is almost as large of a gap as you can get. Houston's pass game, in theory, should be very, very effective this matchup. Wouldn't be shocked to see, Stroud with 3 touchdowns in this particular matchup based off of this adjusted line play report. Getting into the run blocking side, Houston number 19. They're not super good, a little bit below average, but fortunately for them, Arizona number 29. So Arizona not very good at stopping the run. The DVOA is pretty even there, actually dead even at 28 apiece. So defensive run DVOA is 28, offensive run DVOA 28. Really, those kind of cancel each other out. Houston's probably going to find it a little bit easier than usual to run the ball against Arizona. And, they should consistently be getting decent yardage here when they do run the ball. So really, this is telling me Houston's offense is probably going to be not necessarily firing on all cylinders, but they should be able to sustain drives. They should, if they're getting in third down situations, they should have time to get the ball out and keep the chains moving. The run game isn't going to be a detriment there where it has been in a lot of these other matchups. Arizona is really bad against the run, so Houston should be just fine in the run game there. So if you want to attack Houston's pass game, I think that's viable. Stroud stacks, you're probably going to want to get a double stack in there. You could get a little bit interesting single stack and bring it back with the Singletary, and then run the tight end in Arizona on the opposite side if you're looking to fully game stack this. Again, this is tied for best on the slate. And we got a couple others just below this that are tied for third best on the slate. So it's not necessarily heads and shoulders above everything else. Keep that in mind. But if you want to game stack that, Houston's got a lot of pieces you can attack even in the run game. And Arizona, I think, has a couple bring back options which are viable, especially at tight end. All right, let's get into the other number 1 game total on the slate. That is, Chicago and Detroit. All right, so we have Chicago heading into Detroit. Detroit 7.5-point home favorites. Again, that's a 48 Vegas game total. And with Detroit at 7.5-point home favorites, that gives them a 27.75 team implied total, which is second best on the slate. And Chicago at 20.25 team implied total. It's 14th best. Getting into the Chicago side, they're number 27 in offensive pass protection. Detroit number 14 in the pass rush. Pretty big favor of Detroit here. They should be able to generate pressure. We do have Justin Fields coming back. And typically, if they're going to generate some pressure, that's going to lead to a few more scrambles on Justin Fields' side. He does take a lot of sacks, or has in his career. So I would expect Detroit to have a decent amount of sacks in this particular game, especially if they're up 7.5 and Detroit has to pass the ball a little bit more. That being said, we certainly saw Fields destroy Detroit last year in both matchups in terms of running the ball. If he's going to be getting out and scrambling, that could certainly still be the case this season. But keep in mind, he's probably going to be under pressure. He's going to need to get the ball out a little bit quicker. So DJ Moore and Kmet are probably your best bet. Mooney has been a deep threat in his career, but he's also seen some of these underneath things where they try to get the ball in his hands and try to make something happen at the line of scrimmage. So some of those could certainly be in play too. And obviously Chicago, if they're under pressure, passes could go to the running backs as well, a few additional targets. That pass DVOA is even worse here. Chicago at 24, offensive pass DVOA, Detroit number 10. This is just telling me that Chicago is probably not going to be Very effective moving the ball in the air. DJ Moore, Komet, really probably the only options you're going to be interested there in Chicago. And the offensive run blocking is a little bit better here. Chicago number 4 in offensive run blocking, Detroit 17. And then run DVOA for Chicago number 10, Detroit number 11. I think Chicago is going to have to move the ball on the ground if they're going to be interested in moving the ball at all. I think that's going to be it, and that's going to end up being how they move the ball. So Khalil Herbert coming back, I don't know what type of workload he's going to have, but he came off the IR on I believe an ankle injury of some sort. So he might not be 100%, but it is week 1 coming off the IR, and he's off the injury report altogether. He's not questionable, anything like that. It seemed like it was maybe a 3 to 4 week injury, and they just put him on the IR, and now he's coming back ready to go. Whether or not he's effective remains to be seen, but I think he gets, no pun intended, the lion's share of the workload here in the Chicago backfield, and then probably sprinkling in some Foreman and Rashawn Johnson onto some of those third down plays. Could certainly see that as well. And I think that's how Chicago is going to end up moving the ball. On offense is probably going to be a struggle on the pass game, and then that run game a little bit more effective. Don't be surprised if they lean on that pretty heavily just to keep Detroit's offense off the field as well. And they might be somewhat successful doing that. It's just going to be a grind fest for them, unless Justin Fields can make something happen. But it looks like that's going to also have to be with his legs. All right, getting into the Detroit side, they are the number 2 team implied total on the slate. How's it looking for them? Very, 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 very good in the pass game. So they're number 2 in offensive pass protection. Chicago dead last in pass rush. They did get a defensive end here right at the trade deadline, which is a little bit kind of interesting or unique. So this 32 might be a little bit better in terms of generating pressure and getting sacks, but Detroit should be plenty fine there, be able to sit in the pocket and deliver the ball where it needs to go. A lot of times, if it's this wide of a margin, if there's any sort of deep threats on the particular team, I'm interested in that. So Jameson Williams could certainly be in play, especially in tournaments as a deep dart throw. In those deeper leagues, if you're sitting, starting 3 receivers and 2 or 3 more flex plays, he's certainly an option for one of your final flex plays. But really, Detroit should have plenty of time to throw in this matchup based off of this. The pass DVOA 29 for Chicago's defense, number 6 for Detroit's offense. They should be very effective and probably pretty explosive in the pass game too. Wouldn't be shocked to see Amon-Ra St. Brown and Laporta with some pretty high yards per target kind of situation this week in the pass game. Getting into the run game, Detroit's actually very good. Number 2 in offensive run blocking, number 5 in run DVOA. Chicago also number 2 in run stopping, but number 6 in run DVOA. Typically, Detroit has been pretty dominant there, but Chicago also very dominant in the run game, and that's kind of an even type matchup. So typically in those, the studs eat. I'm not necessarily sure if David Montgomery can be listed as a stud, so I don't see him having a particularly huge week, but with Detroit being able to move the ball very effectively in the air, he could certainly see a few scoring opportunities and get it done there in your seasonal leagues. Jahmyr Gibbs as well. He's certainly an explosive player, and we kind of saw him have a pretty solid week last week despite Montgomery coming back. And he did get most of the volume, but that was, again, Montgomery's first game back from injury. That could change in this particular matchup. If Detroit's up big, we could see, a lot of David Montgomery and him just kind of grinding out the clock. But yeah, kind of an interesting one there. Probably wouldn't be super interested in DFS purposes. Maybe Montgomery, if you think he's going to fall into the end zone a couple of times on FanDuel, would be serviceable. He's probably expensive though. But really, Detroit should be moving the ball well. The run game's pretty neutral, similar to Chicago's offense, and they should be very effective moving the ball here in Detroit. It's a dome. Expect a lot of points from them in this particular matchup. All right, getting on to the next games on the slate. We have 2 of them tied for 3rd, one right below here, Las Vegas at Miami. We'll get into that one first, and then Los Angeles and Seattle is next. So This is the third best game total on the slate. It's at 46.5, so 1.5 points less than those first games. Miami actually 13.5 point home favorites here. That puts them at 30 for a team implied total, which is number one on the slate. And Vegas at 16.5 for their team implied total, 15th best on the slate. Getting into the Las Vegas side, the offensive pass protection number 24, Miami number 4 in the defensive pass rush. Miami's defense certainly in play in DFS tournaments. They should be generating quite a bit of pressure on Aiden O'Connell. He's a rookie quarterback. We could certainly see a few mistakes and certainly some sacks in this particular matchup. Vegas probably going to have to get the ball out a little bit quicker. Fortunately for them, they got Devontae Adams. He's certainly capable of getting open quick. Jacoby Myers, more of an underneath to mid-range route runner. He should be able to get open just fine. Michael Mayer may see a few more targets. Josh Jacobs may see a few more targets if they're under duress. Like I said, fortunately for Vegas, they do have some options there to get the ball out to some decent weapons if they need to get it out quickly. And I expect that to be the case in this matchup. Pass DVOA 29 for Vegas, 17 for Miami. Again, in the favor of Miami's defense here. Vegas shouldn't be super effective moving the ball in the air, so expect that kind of moving forward. Devontae Adams probably a fade in some DFS tournaments for sure, as he's probably going to be expensive in this, but Vegas likely going to be down. Obviously, they're 13.5 point underdogs, probably going to be needing to pass. Again, very good situation for Miami's defense. Run blocking wise, Las Vegas number 25, Miami number 19. That's in the favor of Miami ever slightly. So really that's nothing to write home about there. And then the run DVOA 27, Miami 26. Vegas might actually find it a little bit easier than usual to run the ball, but it's not a particularly great matchup for them since they are so bad. But really, if Vegas is going to be moving the ball effectively, it's probably going to be on the ground against this Miami team. The new coach there, Antonio Pierce, does want to run the ball a bunch. He talks incessantly about getting Josh Jacobs to the century mark every single game. So it might be a situation where even if they're down a couple of scores, he's still feeding the rock to Josh Jacobs. And with him probably getting a few more targets, he might be the only one from Vegas I'd be interested in this particular matchup as a bring back. Oddly enough, in this Miami game. So keep that in mind. Kind of more of a fade for me. Obviously, they're 15th team implied total for a reason, so they're not expected to score a ton of points. Getting into the more fun matchup here, Miami. They are number one team total there on the slate at 30. They are number 5 in offensive pass protection. Vegas number 20 in the defensive pass rush. So they should have some decent amount of time to pass the ball, which is always going to be good for Tua and the pass game there in Miami. Miami's pass game is number 4 in DVOA. Vegas 15th in the pass DVOA on defense. Again, this is just telling us Miami should be pretty efficient and effective on offense. It's not like a blowout type of matchup, but it is very good for their pass game. They should have plenty of time to throw and be very effective moving the ball. So obviously interested in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle in this particular matchup. The better matchup actually outside of this is Miami's run game. They are number 3 in offensive run blocking. Vegas 31st in stopping the run. That's a huge favor for Miami. And then DVOA, Miami number 2, Las Vegas 27th. A huge favor for Miami as well. Certainly could be interesting playing both Devon Achane, which is how he pronounces his name, as well as Raheem Mostert. I think both of them could do really well in this matchup, especially if Miami's going to be up big and Las Vegas is struggling, punting a bunch. Miami's probably going to have a lot of opportunities on offense. They shouldn't be slowed down at all. They should be just cranking through on scoring, getting into the red zone, getting into scoring position, and we could certainly see even, they get kind of unique with their play calling, just dumping it off to the running back with some sort of unique play when they get down near the end zone, and we've seen that a few times this year. So running back certainly in play too. Really, you can't go wrong with Miami. It's a matter of, are you going to get the guy that gets multi-touchdowns or not in this particular matchup? If Miami is sitting at a 30-point team implied total, they're sitting at about basically 4 touchdowns and a field goal. Could we see one go to Hill, one to Waddle, one to Achane, and one to Mostert? Certainly. And then that's probably ruining any DFS fun. But if you find the diamond that's going to give you the couple of touchdowns on the skill player position, you're going to be dominating in this. But like I said, you probably can't go wrong with any of those 4 options in their offense. All right, let's get into the Los Angeles-Seattle game. This one's interesting. Basically a pick'em, so depending on what platform you're trying to bet on, Seattle's a 1-point favorite. Los Angeles is a 1-point favorite. Los Angeles a half-point favorite. Seattle, whatever. It's basically a pick'em, so I put it in there as a pick'em because it depends on what platform. Seattle's a 1-point favorite. Los Angeles a 1-point favorite. Los Angeles half-point favorite. So really no favorite in this pick'em. Again, it's that 46.5-point Vegas game total. Both teams have a 23.25 team implied total, which is 8th best on the slate. Getting into the Seattle side, number 8 in offensive pass protection. Los Angeles number 15. It's a so-so, little bit above average matchup for Seattle's offensive pass protection. So they should have a little bit more time than they're used to throwing the ball, but not an excessive amount. And then pass DVOA number 9 for Seattle, Los Angeles number 18. A little bit better there, but really this is just suggesting that Seattle's pass game should be effective. It's going to be a little bit more efficient than they're perhaps used to, and they're probably pretty used to being pretty effective with the number 8 and 9 overall pass DVOA. So I do like Seattle's pass game here. We have seen the tight ends kind of phased out to an extent, and we're getting those 3 wide receivers in play. DK Metcalf and Lockett seem to be the best bets for huge games, but JSN is probably one of those guys that can certainly put up those sort of points and could in a matchup like this. Pick your poison, but I'd be leaning towards the Metcalf-Lockett route in this particular matchup. I just think those two will do a little bit better than Jackson Smith and Jigba. Getting into the run game, it's actually pretty good for Seattle as well. Number 12 in offensive run blocking, Los Angeles 23 in stopping the run. So Seattle should be very effective moving the ball on any given run. And then the DVOA number 19 for Seattle, 25 for Los Angeles. Slightly in the favor of Seattle here, just letting us know that the run game should also be somewhat effective or efficient in this game as well. Maybe a little bit more than they're used to. This is going to be good for Ken Walker. This is basically telling me that he's not going to get hit at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage a lot in this particular matchup, and he has a decent chance to bust off some big runs. So Seattle's run game certainly in play there. It's going to be back and forth affair. I think that favors Ken Walker more than it does Charbonnet. I think if it's close, they're going to have Ken Walker in there for those home run things. It's usually when Seattle gets behind that we see Charbonnet get involved there, especially in the in the pass game. So he's probably somewhat of a fave for me in this particular matchup, despite being a good Vegas game total. Not somebody I'm going to be playing in DFS, I don't think. All right, getting into the Los Angeles side. They're number 15 in offensive pass protection, Seattle 24 in the defensive pass rush. This is very good for Los Angeles having time to throw. We do have Stafford coming back from his thumb injury, which is really good for the pass game here. Los Angeles number 19 in the offensive pass DVOA, Seattle 23rd in defensive pass DVOA. Again, slightly in the favor of Los Angeles. They should be pretty effective moving the ball here. They get Stafford back. I think this is a good situation for both Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp this week, so keep that in mind. I think both do pretty well in this particular matchup. Shouldn't be under pressure, so they should be able to get it to those guys who just get open. Stafford's certainly savvy, knows where to throw the ball on most plays. Getting into the run blocking side, Seattle number 8 in stopping the run. Los Angeles 14th in the run blocking. Slight edge there to Seattle's defense. Run DVOA is a little bit opposite of that. Los Angeles number 11, Seattle number 16 on defense. Slight favor of Los Angeles in the run game there. It's really kind of an even matchup. And I'm not sure how this run game is going to look for Los Angeles, if it's going to be mostly Darrell Henderson or if it's going to be Royce Freeman or a split. Darrell Henderson, certainly have seen him produce some big games. kind of depends on which person's getting involved in the pass game. Freeman has been pretty solid in that aspect in his career in terms of being a pass catcher, so that could continue here. But really, I see Los Angeles moving the ball via the air. The run game is probably going to be okay, but not how they are moving the ball effectively, which is probably going to lead them to passing a little bit more than they perhaps maybe want to. They are above average in terms of run blocking, but I think they're going to move the ball a lot better in the air, and that's going to be and end up being how they move this ball, especially if it's close. They're going to want what's working, and I think what's working is going to be the pass game. So certainly interested in Matt Stafford's stacks, maybe double stacking Puka and Cooper Kupp. Got plenty of options on the Seattle side and running it back. This game, with as close as Vegas is predicting it, it's in a dome. Certainly both offenses look like they're going to be capable of moving the ball, especially in the air. Ground game for Seattle is also very good and explosive. We could see Ken Walker blast off a run at any point, so that could lead to Los Angeles needing to throw, right, to keep up. This is one that is looking like more of a shootout environment to me, not necessarily based off of pace of play. Seattle, kind of quick in some of those opportunities. Los Angeles a little bit slower. They are the number one pace of play when they're trailing by 7+, but really I don't see them having that. But I think both of these offenses are going to be pretty efficient. So per play, you're going to see a lot of fantasy points scored on a per play basis. Hey, it's a 8-yard run, it's a 14-yard catch, it's a 8-yard catch, it's a 6-yard run, and I think that's going to be kind of how this goes. I think offenses are going to go back and forth here and be pretty effective, and I think this ends up being one of the better matchups where you're going to want a lot of pieces in this particular game. All right, an exciting one there. Let's get into the next game on the slate, which is number 5. That's Los Angeles Chargers and Green Bay, which is another intriguing one here because we got some bad defense here on the Chargers side. But Chargers heading into Green Bay. Chargers are 3-point road favorites here. It's a 44 Vegas game total, giving the Chargers a 23.5-point Vegas game total, 6th best on the slate. Green Bay sitting at 20.5, which is the 13th best on the slate. Again, it's a number 5 game on the slate. Getting into the Chargers side, they are number 9 in offensive pass protection. Green Bay 23rd in the pass rush. So big favor there of Chargers. They should have plenty of time to throw the ball. Pass DVOA, Chargers number 7, Green Bay 21. Again, they should be pretty effective throwing the ball. The problem with the Chargers, they're out Palmer, they're out Williams, Keenan Allen's hurt, and we have the tight end there, Gerald Everett, hurt. I don't know if they're going to play. I think it sounds like Keenan Allen's going to play, but he could be a little bit limited with injury there. I'm not sure if Everett has even practiced yet this week, so it might be the Donald Parham show. Keep that in mind. If Everett does get cleared and looks like he's going to play and not be, limited in any fashion, he's going to be, I think, in play for your tight end dart throws. But really, Keenan Allen show, if he's there and he's out and not limited, he should have a massive week against Green Bay here. If he's not going to be in, or if he's going to be limited, I think we're really going to struggle on the Chargers side in terms of where the ball is going to go. It's probably just going to be Austin Eckler getting a huge workload, a 12, 15 target type of week, even with Keenan Allen in there and limited. It could be the Austin Eckler dump off show for the Chargers this week. Quentin Johnson certainly seeming like the next guy up over there. Darius Davis seemingly getting some playing time there. But really, it's if Keenan Allen's limited, it's going to be Darius Davis, Quentin Johnston, Jalen Guyton, Semi Fehoko. Could be some of these dart throws that you'd be interested in getting. Outside of that, but really it's probably going to be Eckler and Keenan Allen if Gerald Everett's not out there. If Gerald Everett's playing, I could see him getting quite a few targets, and the Chargers do play fast, so keep that in mind. Run blocking wise, Chargers number 26, Green Bay 22nd, and then both run DVOAs are at 22 on offense and defense. This is actually spelling very good for Austin Eckler. He should be a lot more effective on the ground than he's perhaps used to this season. The pass game could also come his way. I'm very interested in Austin Eckler. He might be, your slate breaker in this particular week. I think he's just in line for a massive amount of volume based off of pass game should be good. Run game should be a little bit more effective than they're used to. They're running out of playmakers and options on offense, and he could just be fed a massive workload. And if they're able to move the ball via the air, he could find himself in some scoring situations and maybe account for 2 or 3 touchdowns in this matchup for the Chargers if they're looking to make sure that they punch it in. All right, getting into the Green Bay side, number 14 in offensive pass protection. Chargers number 5 in the adjusted sack rate there. So Chargers could generate some sacks here against Green Bay and Jordan Love. Fortunately for the Packers, though, Chargers number 25 in pass DVOA, so they do give up a lot of fantasy points. Give it up kind of in the air. Green Bay number 13 there. We've seen Jordan Love be willing to air it out deep. That could certainly be the case. I think the pass game should be pretty effective here despite them kind of being under pressure. They might need to get the ball out a little bit quicker, dump offs to Aaron Jones, maybe Luke Musgrave there as the tight end, gets a few more targets, but they should be pretty effective moving the ball in the air. I think that should be an efficient and effective way for them to move the ball in this matchup. Getting into the run blocking side, it's very similar to the Chargers side. So Chargers number 24 in defensive run stopping, Green Bay 16th in run blocking, so a little bit in the favor of Green Bay in terms of getting positive yardage. And then the DVOA is pretty even there, 24 and 25. I'd expect Green Bay's offense to be okay in this particular situation. They might be under pressure, getting a few sacks, but the pass game should be fine moving the ball. And then the run game should be a little bit more effective than they're used to in this particular matchup. It's actually very similar to the Chargers. Pass games should be a little bit more effective, and then the run game should be more effective than they're used to with other teams. So I don't hate this particular game environment either. I think you could probably play Aaron Jones in this, especially if he's going to be effective on the ground and be getting a few more dump offs due to some pressure issues from that Chargers front. You could see him, especially with the pass DVOA being poor, maybe he gets past those second level defenders and has a pretty explosive screenplay or something like that where he can take that to the house, or he just runs a route and gets the ball in the open field and takes one to the house. That's a little bit longer of a passing play for him for a touchdown. Interesting game, certainly not as tight of an environment, I think, as Los Angeles and Seattle, but you certainly could see these offenses go back and forth, especially if Keenan Allen's in there, and we see Green Bay's pass game kind of succeed there with the run game being pretty effective. Another good one there. So let's get into the 6th game on the slate. We have Dallas and Carolina. So this is a home game for Carolina. We do have Dallas actually as 10.5-point road favorites. This is a 42 Vegas game total, so we dropped down pretty quick here, down into the low 40s. That 10.5-point road favorite for Dallas gives them a 26.25 team implied total, which is 5th best on the slate. Carolina at 15.75 is number 18. So remember, 11 games, there's 22 potential teams. Carolina sitting at 18. I always note this, road favorites that are favored by 10 or more points, they actually only cover that spread 10% of the time, or if you want to consider it, 10 plus home underdogs cover the spread at a 90% rate. So as bad as it seems, Carolina looks like they should get shellacked by Dallas. It's just a huge mismatch. Vegas saying they should be a 10-point favorite. You would have had like a 90% success rate in betting that the home team covers. So take that into consideration. This game might stay within the 10 points. Even though it seems like it should be a blowout here for Dallas, Carolina is certainly capable of keeping it close at home. We'll see. Getting into the pass protection, Dallas number 22, number 11 in the pass DVOA. Carolina kind of mirroring that, number 21 in their pass rush, so that's pretty even. And 16th in the pass DVOA, slightly in the favor of Dallas there, but more of a studs eat scenario. Probably more CeeDee Lamb action in this particular matchup with Carolina this week, so keep that in mind. The run blocking is where it's at for Dallas, though. Number 8 in offensive run blocking. Carolina 32nd in stopping the run. Dallas should be very effective moving the ball on the ground here. Offensive run DVOA for Dallas 21, Carolina 31. So again, in the favor of Dallas. I actually think Dallas is going to move the ball pretty effectively on the ground. This is, finally maybe one of those Pollard weeks. We saw Dowdle get involved last week when they were blowing out the team. Again, the pass game is kind of a neutral situation there. I'm not sure if they're going to be as explosive as they have been in the last few weeks because those matchups have been pretty good. This one not as good, but the run game should be very effective for Dallas here. And maybe that's what they lean on in this matchup. Maybe it's a Pollard and Dowdle week, and we see just Lamb and Cook and Gallup get involved a little bit in the pass game, Ferguson a little bit in the pass game this week, but not really cranking it up, scoring 49 points like they did last week. Really, run game looks good. Pass game looks like it's neutral situation, which should benefit CeeDee Lamb the most, as he is like their stud receiver, right? Getting into the Carolina side, they're number 25 in offensive pass protection. Dallas 16th in generating a pass rush, so adjusted sack rate here in the favor of Dallas. Dallas should be able to get a few sacks in this against number 1 pick there, Bryce Young, and he has been the stone worst quarterback against pressure this season. So Dallas defense certainly wouldn't be shocked to see them with multiple turnovers, interceptions in this matchup. Pass DVOA heavily in the favor of Dallas, number 5 on defense. Carolina 31st in the offensive pass DVOA. Wouldn't expect Carolina's pass game to be very effective in this. Going to be under pressure, going to need to get the ball out quickly, probably dropping it off to the tight end. Any underneath routes for Carolina. I'm not really sure who's running that in Carolina. Thielen, who knows who's running those underneath routes. But really, it's probably going to need to get the ball out quick, dump offs to the tight end, dump offs to the running back, probably in play in this particular matchup. The run game is not very good for Carolina, actually worse than the pass game. So Carolina number 29 in the offensive run blocking. Dallas number 6 in stopping the run. Dallas number 8 in run DVOA. Carolina 30th in run DVOA on offense. So really, it's looking like it's going to be a struggle for Carolina on offense. They're probably not going to be moving the ball very effectively. Does that clash with this 90% rate in terms of the home team covering? Maybe Carolina comes out and plays a little bit better than you expect because they are the home team. Dallas on the road. One of those scenarios where maybe Dallas underperforms, Carolina overperforms, and then that game total stays within 10. And it kind of disappoints in terms of total fantasy options. You might not want anybody from Dallas in that matchup, but keep that in mind. It's going to be an intriguing one. Again, that historical rate where that 10-point home underdog keeps it within 10 points. Really difficult to ignore. That's a really significant rate. Like anything 55 to 60% is astronomical in terms of likelihood, and when it reaches 90%, that's almost like lock guarantee. Despite what the adjusted line play looks like with Dallas being able to move the ball fairly effectively, and then Carolina looking like it's going to really struggle, this game could be closer than you'd expect. All right, let's get into the next one on the slate. Number 7, Tampa Bay and San Francisco. Got some lopsided ones here. Miami is super favored, Dallas super favored, San Francisco super favored. So red matchup here. We do have Tampa Bay heading into San Francisco. San Francisco 12-point home favorites, which gives San Francisco with that 41 and a half Vegas game total. San Francisco sitting at 26.75, fourth best game total on the slate for a team. Tampa Bay at 14.75. Believe it or not, they're at 19th out of 22 potential teams with that 14.75 team implied total. So we're probably looking at some pretty ugly teams later on following this game. So getting into the Tampa Bay side, number 7 in offensive pass protection, San Francisco 25th in the defensive pass rush. Again, this is an adjusted sack rate. We have seen San Francisco struggle for a period of time, but they did trade. They got Chase Young there. I think San Francisco's defense is going to be absolutely dominant, so I think this 7 versus 25 might be a little bit skewed. Again, it's adjusted sack rate. Tampa Bay not taking a ton of sacks here. Baker maybe getting the ball out to his playmakers, but this is suggesting that he's going to have a ton of time. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case with San Francisco's defense playing a little bit better here. And if they're up big, they're probably going to see quite a few opportunities for sacks. Getting into the pass DVOA, Tampa Bay 16th, San Francisco 7. That is in the favor of San Francisco's defense, and I think that's going to be the case. I think Tampa Bay is going to struggle to pass the ball a little bit in this matchup. Or moving the ball in the air, and that's probably what they're going to have to if San Francisco's leading by quite a bit in this. Unfortunately for Tampa Bay, they're really bad in the run game, 32nd and 31 in the run DVOA. San Francisco 20th and 21st in stopping the run. It looks like the pass game is actually the better of the two options here. Slightly below average in the pass DVOA, but looking like they might have some time to throw. Run game has been poor all season. San Francisco actually not that good at stopping the run. I just don't see Tampa Bay really running the ball down San Francisco's throat or being in a game scenario where they're going to be running the ball super often. So it's probably going to be the pass game or bust for Tampa Bay in this particular matchup. If Tampa Bay is under pressure, you could certainly see a lot of dump offs to Rachaad White, and he could certainly get there in a PPR setting. Getting into the San Francisco side, number 16 in offensive pass protection, Tampa Bay 19. That's pretty even up. Nothing to write home about there. Sack rate should be pretty standard. Maybe they get 2 or 3 sacks in this game, but nothing really remarkable there. It's just going to be a standard game there. The pass DVOA, though, Tampa Bay 14th, San Francisco number 1. That suggested that San Francisco should be pretty efficient, pretty explosive in this particular matchup. It's a 13-point difference there between the DVOAs. So I think San Francisco is going to be pretty efficient and explosive when they are passing the ball in this particular matchup, and just a standard amount of time to throw. Getting into the run blocking side, San Francisco number 5, Tampa Bay 10 at stopping the run. Looking at the run DVOA, San Francisco number 3, Tampa Bay 7. Really, it's kind of a neutral situation, slightly in the favor of San Francisco. In those situations, studs eat. Fortunately for San Francisco, they have the best stud in the run game that you can think of, which is Christian McCaffrey. He should be fine in this particular matchup as well on the ground, especially if San Francisco is going to be up big. You could see San Francisco lean on him quite a bit. Just know that San Francisco plays slow no matter what's going on. So don't expect a ton of plays, but expect it to be pretty efficient when they do throw the ball, and decently effective when they're running the ball there. They should be able to be just fine moving the ball on offense. All right, that does it for that game. Let's get into the 8th best game total on the slate, Tennessee and Jacksonville. It's a divisional matchup here. Tennessee going into Jacksonville as 7-point underdogs. So that's a 40 Vegas game total, 8th best on the slate. That gives Jacksonville as 7-point home favorites, 23.5 team implied total. That's 6th best on this slate. Tennessee at 16.5 is the 15th best team implied total. Getting into the Tennessee side, 30th in offensive pass protection, Jacksonville 26th in the defensive pass rush. Tennessee actually might find themselves with a little bit more time to pass the ball than they're used to, given this particular situation. That's not bad for Will Levis. Unfortunately, the pass DVOA for Tennessee 22nd, Jacksonville 6th. It's looking like they're not going to be super explosive or super efficient passing the ball, despite having maybe a little bit more time than they're used to get the ball out. Really, in this scenario, I think we've had Treylon Burks already ruled out. It's probably going to be a DeAndre Hopkins type week, just not super explosive. We've seen him be used as a deep threat a lot with Levis there. Huge ADOT, which might be part of why the pass DVOA has kind of dropped down here to 22 with Tannehill playing, and that not being a super high successful rate throwing the ball deep. But don't be shocked if you see a lot of attempts in this matchup for those deep shots to Hopkins. The other thing to note is we've seen Kyle Phillips come back from Tennessee, especially with Burks out, and be kind of a target hog there in Tennessee. That's probably a dude that's been practicing with Will Levis, some during the offseason, as he's not one of the top end wide receivers there. Probably getting some work with Will Levis and a little bit more familiarity there. Getting into the run blocking side, Tennessee number 9, Jacksonville 4th in stopping the run, slight favor of Jacksonville's defense. Tennessee 13 in run DVOA, Jacksonville number 3 in the run DVOA on defense. Going to be a struggle, I think, for Tennessee's run game here. Would be avoiding Henry in this particular matchup, despite us seeing him absolutely shred Jacksonville in the past seasons. I don't think that's going to be the case this week. But just know historically he has absolutely shredded Jacksonville. It's not looking good for this week to be the route that they go. But really, this is actually a better matchup than the past game in terms of the DVOA. This is a 10 difference. This is a lot bigger than that. So the run game actually might be their most effective way that they move the ball in this matchup. It's just not looking good for Tennessee. They'll have time to throw. It just doesn't look like it's going to be very efficient. Getting into the Jacksonville side, they're number 20 in offensive pass protection. Tennessee actually number 7 in the defensive pass rush. They're getting sacks maybe when you wouldn't expect it. That could be the case here where Lawrence gets sacked a little bit more often than you'd expect in a matchup like this. The DVOAs, though, paint a different picture. Jacksonville 15, Tennessee number 27 in the pass DVOA. Jacksonville should be fine moving the ball. They just might not have a ton of time to get the ball out, or they might be under pressure a little bit more. But they should be pretty efficient and pretty effective when they do pass and completing the plays and getting kind of chunk yards there. I think this is going to be good for Christian Kirk. Might be decent for Evan Ingram as well. We've kind of seen really take a backseat to both of those two after week 1, and I think that's probably going to continue in this particular matchup, especially if Jacksonville's under pressure. Don't be shocked to see Ingram with quite a few targets in this matchup. Getting into the Tennessee side, they're number 13 in stopping the run. Jacksonville 30th in run blocking. Tennessee number 4 in run DVOA. Jacksonville 24th in offensive run DVOA. Heavily in the favor of Tennessee's defense here. Wouldn't expect anything big from Travis Etienne in this matchup, which is kind of weird because I feel like we early on saw something similar where Jacksonville just shouldn't be able to run the ball very effectively, and we saw Travis Etienne have a huge week. I think it was maybe New England or Buffalo or somebody like that. They absolutely went off against them despite the matchup not saying it should be good. We're seeing something similar this week where it looks like Jacksonville is going to maybe be a little bit more effective passing the ball than you'd expect. The interesting thing in Jacksonville, doesn't look like they're going to be able to run the ball very well. They might be under pressure here. The pass game is going to be how they have to throw it. But with Tennessee up here struggling, like, 7-point matchup, I think it might end up being a little bit closer than that. I don't want to give the purge siren to say this is an upset alert. Jacksonville could struggle in this, especially if Tennessee can get after them a little bit there. But really, if I'm attacking anything in this matchup, it's going to be Jacksonville's pass game or DeAndre Hopkins probably. Maybe a dart throw on Kyle Phillips. All right. That's the number 8 game total on the slate. We have 3 more, number 9, 10, and 11. Number 9 is Jets going into Buffalo. So this is a late game here. They are 7-point underdogs here. So Buffalo, 7-point home favorites, a 39.5 Vegas game total, 9th best on the slate. That 7-point favorite gives Buffalo 23.25 team implied total, 8th best on the slate. Jets at 16.25, 17th best total on the slate. Again, getting gross here. We're sub 40 now in Vegas game total. The Jets offensive pass protection, 28th. Buffalo, number 8 in the pass rush. Indicative that Jets aren't going to have a ton of time to throw the ball. Buffalo could get a lot of sacks. What does that mean? That means they get the ball out a little bit quicker. There's probably going to be some more dump offs to Breece Hall. And the running backs, don't be surprised if you see Conklin with 6-7 targets in this particular matchup as well. If Buffalo's getting after them, especially if they're up big in this, they're going to be pinning their ears back and getting after it. So don't be shocked to see those guys with quite a few receptions in this matchup, or at least targets. Getting into the pass DVOA, Jets 30th, Buffalo actually number 24 in the pass DVOA, so they have not been very good at stopping the pass. Just kind of with this, it's indicative Jets aren't going to have a ton of time to throw, but when they do, they might be a little bit more effective than they're used to. This is probably solid for Garrett Wilson. Again, Conklin probably in play with being effective once he gets the ball in the pass game there. Getting into the run blocking side, Jets on offense 28th in run blocking, Buffalo number 7. So I wouldn't expect the run game to be particularly good in this matchup, probably getting hit behind the line of scrimmage quite a few times, which isn't good for them. Run DVOA 29 for the Jets, 15 for Buffalo. Again, not looking good for the Jets offense here. They should struggle. Pass game looks like it's the best bet. Dump offs to Conklin, dump offs to Breece Hall, and Garrett Wilson may be a little bit more explosive in this particular matchup with Buffalo's pass DVOA being so poor. Really going to probably avoid the running game here. I don't think Jets are going to be very good in that department, but Breece Hall could certainly get there on the pass game. Again, low Vegas game total. Not super interested in Breece Hall and DFS. Buffalo number 3 in offensive pass protection. Jets number 6 in the defensive pass rush. Pretty even matchup here. DVOA is even closer. 3 for Buffalo, 4 for the Jets. Buffalo probably going to find a little bit more of a struggle to move the ball on the pass game than they're used to. A lot of times this is like a studs eat scenario, so this is probably only good for Stephon Diggs. You could see him, with a huge workload, getting hyper targeted in this, just being kind of inefficient with those particular targets. I think that's going to be how Buffalo ends up with this. Also, if they're going to be under pressure, you could see maybe Kincaid getting a few more targets here, maybe some dump offs to the running backs. But really, more of a Steph Diggs type of game in my mind in this matchup. Getting into the run blocking, Buffalo number 1 in offensive run blocking, surprisingly there. Jets number 3 in stopping the run, so that's pretty even. It's really kind of nothing to write home about. Buffalo used to getting chunk yardage, positive yardage. Jets used to, getting people behind the line of scrimmage and, shorter runs. It evens out in the wash. The run DVOA, though, a little bit different. Buffalo number 4, so they've been pretty effective compared to historical averages. Jets number 19 in the run DVOA. This is actually the best matchup for Buffalo in this. Looks like the run game in general, that DVOA probably telling us they're going to be a little bit more explosive in the run game, which is going to benefit James Cook. Especially if Buffalo is going to be under duress, James Cook could see quite a few more targets. Wouldn't be shocked to see him have an all right game in this, but really with the Jets defense being so good and their offense being so bad, this is really a stay away for me in terms of DFS. I don't know if I'm going to grab any pieces. The ones that I would want are going to be expensive and not interested in paying up for a game environment like this, at least for DFS. You should be fine with some of those studs, though, in your seasonal long leagues. Just don't expect any ceiling outcomes from them. All right, believe it or not, the Giants going into the Washington Commanders is not the lowest Vegas game total on the slate at 37.5. It is the 10th game total on the slate out of 11. Washington, 9-point home favorites. That gives them a 23.25 team implied total. Again, tied for 8th best on the slate. A lot of teams with that 23.25 team implied total. The Giants, unfortunately, at 14.25. They are the 20th ranked team on the slate. Again, there's 11 game totals, so they're not even the worst, believe it or not, at 14.25. All right, a lot of red for Giants here on offense. They're 32 across the board, except for their offensive run blocking is at 31. So they are stone worst offense, bar none. No arguments about that. Fortunately for them, Washington 27th in the defensive pass rush. They did just get rid of 2 excellent pass rushers, so that's probably getting worse. Defensive pass DVOA 31. Surprisingly, Giants might be more effective in the pass game than they're used to in this. But again, if we're looking at DFS, this is a really low game total. DeVito isn't somebody that you're going to want to start in DFS. You're not going to want pass catchers from the Giants because it's just been awful. We don't really know who to attack. but you might find the Giants a little bit more successful passing the ball in this matchup. Which is probably going to be how they have to move the ball, considering the run game looks a little bit worse than that. Washington 21st in run stopping, number 10 in run DVOA on defense, so don't expect Barkley to have a big game, at least in the rushing department, but he could certainly get involved in the pass game and see some success there. I don't know. Really, if I'm getting anybody from the Giants, it's probably Barkley, and just hoping that he gets involved in the pass game. But again, low Vegas game total, DFS, it's going to be a complete fade for me. On the Washington side, number 31 in offensive pass protection, 25th in offensive pass DVOA. Giants mirroring that, number 31 in defensive pass rush, number 26 in pass DVOA. Washington should be a little bit more effective than they're used to passing the ball. We have seen them actually be volume-based, pretty successful in the pass game. They might be a little bit more efficient than they're used to. So this is actually good for Sam Howell in that pass game. If you got some of those players on your deep dynasty rosters or fantasy lineups, they should be okay. Terry McLaurin, okay, in this particular scenario. What's a little bit better, though, is Washington's run game. They're 11th in offensive run blocking, Giants 25th. Washington 8th in offensive run DVOA, Giants 30th in the defensive run DVOA. So this is suggesting that Washington should be able to run the ball very effectively. Antonio Gibson downgraded to doubtful. Probably means Brian Robinson's going to have a huge workload. We could see Chris Rodriguez get involved there as well. And if Washington's a huge home favorite and they're going to be pretty effective running the ball and they're going to be pretty effective passing the ball, wouldn't be shocked to see Brian Robinson have a pretty decent game in this. One of those scenarios where he gets 22, 25 carries, 110 yards, 2 touchdowns in a game environment that looks otherwise pretty nasty. Washington should be able to move the ball effectively, and both in the pass and the run game. So that's kind of an interesting one there. Washington player certainly on my radar for DFS, especially if the Giants are going to be able to move the ball, passing it a little bit easier than they're used to. They could end up being a little bit better of a game environment than you'd perhaps think with the 37.5 game total there. All right, last game on the main slate here, Pittsburgh and Cleveland. And this is really, really nasty. So we got Pittsburgh heading into Cleveland. It's oh my gosh, I'm struggling here with the mouse clicks. Pittsburgh heading into Cleveland. Cleveland 1.5 point home favorites. It's a 33 Vegas game total. I don't know if I've seen one so low. Absolutely atrocious. Cleveland 17.25 team implied total as the favorites. Pittsburgh 15.75 team implied total there. 15th and 19th best on the slate. Need to check my cell references there, though. We got 11 games. I don't think I saw any team at 22 in terms of their team implied total, but maybe we had a bunch tied at 20th. Anyway, let's get into the Pittsburgh side. 12th in offensive pass protection, 20th in DVOA, 15th in run blocking, 12th in run DVOA. I say these across the board because Cleveland is number 1 defense across the board. It's going to be a tough game for Pittsburgh moving the ball. It doesn't look like any one pass or a run is going to be worse or better than the other. Expect Pittsburgh to kind of be under duress, need to get the ball out a little bit quicker. That's probably better for Deontay Johnson and I would say Jalen Warren are probably your best bets. We should have Pat Freiermuth coming back in this particular matchup. I wouldn't be shocked to see him with 7 or 8 targets in this matchup either. Trying to get the ball out quickly, and he may end up being their best bet in this matchup. Really, the run game, Najee Harris, fade that big time. He's going to be on my fade list once again in a matchup like this. Low Vegas game total. Probably not a ton of scoring opportunities, and he is not going to be involved as much as Jalen Warren in the pass game. Getting into the Cleveland side, they have been pretty bad on offense. Number 23 in pass protection, 28th in pass DVOA. Pittsburgh, number 9 in the pass rush, 8 in pass DVOA. Don't expect Cleveland to move the ball very effectively in the air. They might be under pressure, taking sacks. Wouldn't be shocked there. They do have rookie in there starting the rest of the season with Deshaun Watson out for the rest of the season in his shoulder injury. So keep that in mind. Pittsburgh certainly defense is in play. Cleveland defense is in play as well. It's just going to be a defensive matchup. And, if they're going to be low scoring, 15, 17 points, I don't even know if they're going to get there. Based off of this info, it'll be an interesting one there. Run blocking. Cleveland 24th, fortunately for them. Pittsburgh 26th in the defensive run stopping. Cleveland 20th in run DVOA. Pittsburgh 17th in the run DVOA. So these are pretty even matchups. If Cleveland's going to move the ball and keep the ball out of the hands of the rookie quarterback, it's probably going to be a good game for Jerome Ford, especially if Pittsburgh's not moving the ball, punting it a lot. I think Jerome Ford's going to get some pretty decent volume here, and he should be okay. In this particular matchup. Maybe he sees 20, 22 carries. He's going to get you 90 to 110 yards. Whether or not he scores, I don't know. But he's certainly explosive enough that he can rip one off. He's really the only person I'm interested in such a poor game total. And Kareem Hunt, we could see his 5-game touchdown streak come to an end here if Cleveland's not moving the ball very effectively. One thing to keep in mind with the pass game being so poor and the run being pretty effective there, Cleveland's kicker is probably in play to kick 2 or 3 field goals here if the run game's being effective, and then they get behind the chains and they could find themselves kicking 30, 40-yard field goals or 40, 50-yard field goals in this matchup. I'm not sure what the wind's going to be like in Cleveland this week, but keep that in mind. All right. That does it for the main slate. Let's get into the 2 island games and attack those, see if we can't make some money on those in our captain matchup. So we have Minnesota on Sunday Night Football heading into Denver. Denver 2.5-point home favorites. This is a 42.5 Vegas game total. That is important because when it gets that low, these defenses and kickers always get into the picture in terms of top 6 fantasy point scores in this matchup. So Denver, 22.5 team implied total. Minnesota, 20-point team implied total. Getting into the Minnesota side, number 11 in offensive pass protection. Denver, 22nd in the pass rush. Minnesota, 12th in pass DVOA. Denver, dead last at number 32 in the pass DVOA. So their defense has been pretty bad. This is actually suggestive that Minnesota should be pretty good running the ball, or pretty good moving the ball in the air. We do have Justin Jefferson off of the injury list. He's certainly capable of playing. If he does play in this, it's looking like he could be very effective in this matchup. Jordan Addison certainly in play. Hawkinson certainly in play. Just looks like a overall really good matchup for Minnesota's pass game. Getting into the run blocking, Minnesota number 21, Denver 30th in stopping the run, and 26th in DVOA for Minnesota, 32 in run DVOA for Denver. This is indicative that Minnesota probably going to have a pretty decent amount of time to throw the ball in this matchup, pretty decent time running the ball in this particular matchup. So Alexander Mattison should be decent in this, especially if Minnesota is going to be passing the ball very effectively. They could find themselves in scoring situations where we do see Alexander Mattison actually plunge one into the end zone. I don't know how expensive he's going to be on the Island Game matchup, but he's certainly in the pool of players who I might have in my lineups this week. But really the pass game looking like the better option in Minnesota. So let's look at the Denver side and see if we can kind of come up with a game and put together some pieces that you'd want for this matchup. Denver, number 29 in offensive pass protection. Minnesota, number 10 in the defensive pass rush. Pretty heavily in the favor of Minnesota here. Denver could take some sacks or need to get the ball out quickly to their underneath players. Minnesota, number 9 in the defensive pass DVOA. Denver, 14th in offensive pass DVOA. Again, slightly in the favor of Minnesota here. So I wouldn't expect Denver's pass game to be super effective. That might be under duress. Needing to get the ball out a little bit quicker, we could see some dump offs to Javonte Williams. Getting out to the tight ends a little bit. Underneath routes is probably more in the favor of Judy Sutton. Really, I'm not entirely sure if those are going to be good plays in this matchup. Really, the way that this is looking. The run blocking looks like it's going to be a little bit better for Denver, or the run game. Number 7 in offensive run blocking for Denver. Minnesota 15th in stopping the run. And then run DVOA, Denver number 18, Minnesota number 12. That's a 6-point difference there. Denver just kind of behind the ball a little bit in the pass DVOA in general. I think their offense is going to struggle a little bit. What's going to be the most effective? I think it's going to be dump offs to the running backs. Javonte Williams again there. I think he's going to be in a lot of my lineups. It's going to be Javonte Williams. We're going to be looking at the Minnesota pass attack, maybe getting Alexander Mattison involved. With Denver's matchup the way it is, I would be interested in Denver's kicker. Minnesota's defense also certainly in play here with that pass rush being what it is. So with the lower Vegas game total, I think we see Minnesota's defense. The pass game should be good. Javonte Williams probably going to be the best bet for Denver in terms of scoring fantasy points. And really with Denver looking like it's going to struggle on offense, Minnesota looking like it'll be just fine. Let's go ahead and give the purge siren. I don't know what these people are betting on. Minnesota goes into Denver. I think they take home this victory. I think Minnesota's defense can certainly handle Denver here, but who's gonna benefit in Denver? I think kicker and Javonte Williams are the people I'm looking at the most. And then on Minnesota, the pass game certainly effective, and Alexander Mattison could plunge one in. But really attacking Minnesota, it's probably going to be 4 Minnesota players, 2 Denver, or maybe even a 5-1 in some of these cases with Minnesota's defense involved. So, all right, let's get that island game out of the way and get to the Monday night game, which is potential Super Bowl matchup here. Philadelphia and Kansas City. In Kansas City, Monday Night Football, 45.5 Vegas game total here. Kansas City, 2.5-point home favorites. Kansas City, 24 team implied total. Philadelphia, 21.5 team implied total. Getting into Philadelphia, offense, pass protection, number 19. Kansas City, number 3 in generating pass rush. So very good sack rate there for Kansas City. Philadelphia, number 8 in the offensive pass DVOA. Kansas City, number 3 in the defensive pass DVOA. So looking like Philadelphia might be under some duress here in the pocket, but kind of the pass DVOA a little bit behind the ball. So Philadelphia probably going to have to grind it out on the pass offense there. Really, if we're interested in anyone here, it's probably going to be A.J. Brown. We do have Goddard, I believe, listed as doubtful in this particular matchup. So when he's out, it could be Devonta Smith picking up the slack there for him in the pass game. Fortunately for Philadelphia, looking like the run game is going to be a little bit better for them. 13th in run blocking, Kansas City 27th in stopping the run. This is going to be good for Swift. Number 6 in run DVOA for Philadelphia, Kansas City 20th. Really, I think that's how Philadelphia is going to move the ball. It's going to be running it. I'd be interested in Jalen Hurts and Swift being on the Philadelphia side, and then kind of going from there. If Philadelphia is going to be running the ball pretty effectively, pass game may be struggling or taking some sacks there. Philadelphia's kicker is certainly in play for me as well. 45.5 game total, not super high. Could be kicker gets 12, 15 points in this and ends up in the top 6. Getting into the Kansas City side, they're number 1 in offensive pass protection. Philadelphia number 13 in the adjusted sack rate. So Kansas City probably has a decent amount of time to throw the ball. Nothing to write home about. They've been pretty good in that department and not taking sacks. Kansas City, number 5 in the offensive pass DVOA. Philadelphia, 22nd in the defensive pass DVOA. Kansas City probably going to be really effective moving the ball in the air, so keep that in mind. Patrick Mahomes obviously in play here. His pass catchers, Kelsey's obviously the number 1 target there. Rashee Rice seems to be your best bet in terms of, wide receiver weaponry. But that really does get spread around. Actually, Justin Watson, especially in an island game, if Kansas City is going to have time to throw the ball, he has shown to be kind of the best deep threat in their team, and he's out there running a lot of routes. So I don't know what he's going to be for pricing, but he's going to be a good cheap option, I think, to get into your island game matchups here. Justin Watson, keep that name in mind. Run blocking for Kansas City, unfortunately not going to be looking super hot here. 22 in offensive run blocking. Philadelphia, number 9, and stopping the run. They have been really good in this department this season. Kansas City, 23, run DVOA on offense. Philadelphia, number 2. Wouldn't expect Pacheco or the running backs here from Kansas City to be very effective. They're going to be off of my island game matchups, but Kansas City certainly capable of driving the field and having the running backs kind of vulture a lot of that heavy lifting from the pass game once they get down near the goal line. But it's not looking like they're going to be overall very efficient in this particular matchup on Monday Night Football. Kind of getting into this, Kansas City looking like should be fine moving the ball in the air. Philadelphia on the ground. Vegas game total and Vegas line does seem pretty spot on there. About a 3-point bump for the home team. Kansas City at 2.5-point home favorites. So nothing to write home about there. No upsets or anything like that, like the Sunday Night Football game with Minnesota and Denver. So that's going to do it for the Week 11 show of the Adjusted Line Play Report. Hopefully you can take this information, make a little bit better decisions on your start sit for your Dynasty leagues, for your redraft leagues, your DFS lineups. Hopefully you can take home what players you need to get in, especially on these island games, to win that money. And hopefully we can go out there and win some money together in these tournaments. Really appreciate the view. Appreciate the new subscribers. If you do well, certainly let me know. Reach out on Twitter at Todzilla1337 and let me know how you did. Let's go take down those tournaments and win some money together, folks. Thanks. Bye.